Captain Velnor of the Galactic Survey ship Cautious Regard had seen a lot of scary things in his 30-year career. Asteroid fields, gamma-ray bursts. That one time the food replicator gained sentience and started judging his dietary choices. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for planet designation Terra Adjacent 447. "Captain," Pilot Cree chittered, her antennae twitching nervously. "The bioscanner results are in, and I really think we should just leave. Like, right now. Immediately. Perhaps faster than immediately, if that's possible." Velnor's scales rippled with what could generously be called concern, but was more accurately described as pure dread. "Define the threat level, Pilot." Cree's compound eyes somehow managed to look even more terrified. "All of them, sir. The threat level is all of them. From the science station Plento, a gelatinous blob of a creature who had once written a 1,400-page thesis on proper safety equipment maintenance, made a sound like someone strangling a synthesizer. Captain, the atmospheric composition alone should be classified as a weapon. 21% oxygen. Do you understand what I'm saying? 21%. That's not an atmosphere. That's a slow-motion combustion event waiting to happen." Velnor pulled up the bioscanner readout on the main display and immediately wished he hadn't. The list of hazards scrolled past like the galaxy's most depressing shopping list. Caustic dihydrogen monoxide covering 70% of the surface. Extreme radiation exposure from the local star. Temperature fluctuations that would make a proper species invest in real estate elsewhere. Atmospheric electrical discharges. Tectonic instability. And the local fauna. Oh, sweet merciful void, the local fauna. "According to this," Velnor said slowly, "there are organisms down there that can kill you with neurotoxins, venom, physical trauma, disease, parasitic infection, and apparently, in some cases, sheer spite." "That last one might be an error in the translation matrix," Plento offered weakly. "I'm not willing to bet my life on might," Cree said, already calculating a retreat vector. Velnor stared at the planet rotating peacefully below them. It looked nice enough from orbit, blue and green and white, like a decorative marble. But the bioscanner was telling a different story. The bioscanner was basically screaming, "Turn around, you idiots, this is a death world." "Regulations state we need to at least perform a basic survey," Velnor said, with all the enthusiasm of someone volunteering for a root canal. Regulations were written by people sitting in comfortable offices who have never seen a planet where the rain is acidic and the native life forms have evolved teeth specifically designed for murder, Cree pointed out. "Water isn't acidic," Plento corrected. "It's just a universal solvent that will slowly break down most materials and also happens to be essential for the horrifying biological processes occurring down there." "Oh well, that makes me feel so much better." Velnor was about to order a full retreat when the communications console beeped. They all stared at it. Then they stared at each other. Then they stared at it again. "Is that," Cree began, "coming from the planet?" "Impossible," Plento said. "Nothing could survive down there long enough to develop communication technology." The console beeped again, more insistently this time. Velnor, against every survival instinct his species had developed over millions of years of evolution, pressed the receive button. The view screen flickered to life, and Captain Velnor found himself staring at what the bioscanner was helpfully labeling as bipedal mammalian organism, extreme threat level, approach with caution or preferably don't approach at all. The creature was smiling. It had visible teeth and everything. "Hey there," the creature said cheerfully. "Noticed you folks hovering up there. You guys lost or something? GPS acting up? Happens to me all the time in the mountains." Velnor's translator was working overtime. "You are communicating while exposed to the surface environment." "Well, yeah," the creature said, looking confused. "I mean, I'm outside. Would be pretty weird to communicate from inside. Though I guess technically I do that too when I'm texting, but that's different." Cree leaned toward the screen, her antennae practically vibrating with disbelief. "You're not wearing any environmental protection." The creature looked down at itself. "I mean, I've got clothes on. Shirt, pants, boots. Pretty standard hiking gear." Though I'll admit the boots are getting kinda old. Should probably replace them before winter. Your dermal layer is exposed to direct stellar radiation, Plento said, sounding faint. Oh, you mean the sun? The creature glanced up at the sky. Yeah, it's a gorgeous day. Clear skies, temps around 75 degrees, got a nice breeze going. Honestly, couldn't ask for better weather. He took a sip from a container he was holding. The bioscanner immediately labeled it as a mild corrosive substance with stimulant properties. Velnor felt his scales go cold. You're consuming a caustic agent. This? It's coffee, buddy. Little bitter today, honestly. Might have left it on the heat too long. The creature, apparently unbothered by drinking liquid death, smiled again. Name's Jake Morrison, by the way. Park ranger. Well, technically I'm off duty today, but you know how it is. We absolutely do not know how it is, Cree muttered. Jake seemed to notice their ship properly for the first time. That's a sweet ride you got there. Custom job? Don't think I've seen anything like it. You folks from out of town? Out of town, Velnor repeated slowly. Yes, very out of town. Approximately 470 light years out of town. No kidding, wow. That's a commute. Hey, if you want to come down, I can show you around. Some real pretty trails around here. Got a waterfall about 2 miles north that's absolutely stunning this time of year. The crew of the Cautious Regard exchanged glances. Their scanners had detected that waterfall. It was registered as a high-velocity caustic liquid hazard with significant kinetic impact potential. You want us, Velnor said carefully, to come down to the surface of this planet. I mean, sure, if you want. No pressure. But you came all this way, seems a shame not to at least check out the scenery. Plus, I've got a cooler full of sandwiches back at the ranger station. More than happy to share. Plento made a noise like a deflating balloon. He's inviting us to consume biological matter from an uncontrolled environment. It's turkey and Swiss, Jake clarified helpfully. Made them this morning. Velnor realized they were at a crossroads. Either this Jake Morrison was the most durable organism in the known galaxy, or their instruments were catastrophically malfunctioning. Given that their instruments had never been wrong before, not even that time Cree had accidentally spilled reactive gel on the console, that left option 1. Which was frankly terrifying. We will, Velnor said slowly. Send down a probe first to assess the environment. Oh, sure, Jake said agreeably. I'll keep an eye out for it. See you soon, I hope. Should be a great day for first contact. The screen went dark. The bridge of the Cautious Regard was silent except for the gentle hum of the life support systems and Cree's nervous chittering. Captain, Plento finally said, I would like to formally state for the record that this is a terrible idea, and we're all going to die. Noted, Velnor said. Launch the probe. Let's see what we're dealing with. 20 minutes later, the probe sent back its first images. Jake Morrison had found it, waved at it, and taken what appeared to be a self-portrait with it, while grinning and holding up 2 fingers in a V-shape. He thinks it's recreational equipment, Cree whispered in horror. He's posing with our advanced reconnaissance technology like it's a toy, Plento added. Velnor stared at the image, at Jake's casual stance, at the Death World paradise behind him, at the complete and utter lack of concern on the human's face. Prep the landing shuttle, he said finally, and get me the heavy hazard suits, the really heavy ones. The ones we used for the sulfuric acid moon survey? Cree asked. The ones we used for the sulfuric acid moon survey inside an active volcano, Velnor corrected. This was either going to be the most interesting first contact in galactic survey history, or the shortest. Possibly both. The landing shuttle touched down in what the scanners insisted on calling a Class 5 biohazard zone with multiple extinction vectors. But what looked to Velnor's eyes like a pleasant meadow. Flowers were blooming. Small flying creatures were making musical sounds. A gentle wind was blowing. It was absolutely horrifying. Atmospheric suit integrity at maximum, Velnor reported, checking his gear for the 15th time. The hazard suit was a marvel of engineering, capable of protecting him from temperatures that would vaporize most metals, pressures that could crush starships, and radiation that could sterilize a small moon. For this mission, it felt barely adequate. "I'm reading the oxygen levels again," Cree said from inside her own suit, which made her look like a metallic bubble with legs. "Captain, we're going to catch fire. We're just going to spontaneously combust the moment we open the door." "That's not how oxygen works," Plento said, though his suit's speakers made his voice sound uncertain. "I don't care how oxygen works. I care that there's too much of it." The shuttle door opened with a hiss. The 3 crew members stood at the threshold, staring out at the nightmare hellscape that their instruments insisted was immediately lethal. Jake was waiting about 20 feet away, still wearing what appeared to be completely inadequate protective clothing. He waved. "Hey, you made it. Welcome to Earth." "Welcome? Earth?" So that's what the locals called it. Velnor filed that information away and carefully stepped out onto the surface. His suit's weight distribution system compensated for the higher-than-comfortable gravity. Every sensor he had was screaming warnings: temperature alerts, radiation alerts, atmospheric composition alerts, biological contamination alerts. His heads-up display looked like a fireworks show of danger indicators. "Thanks for coming down," Jake said, approaching with a relaxed stride that suggested he wasn't constantly one step away from death. "I know it probably seems a little weird, first contact and all, but I figure we're all just trying to get along in the universe, right?" "Your planet is trying to kill us," Cree blurted out. Jake blinked. "What?" "No, it's not. It's beautiful out today. Look at that sky. Not a cloud anywhere." Velnor glanced up. The local star was bombarding them with enough radiation to require level 8 shielding. The stellar emissions are considerable. "Oh, the sun? Yeah, it's pretty bright. Good thing too, since it's supposed to rain tomorrow. Gotta enjoy the sunshine while we got it." Jake pulled out a container from his pocket and opened it. Velnor's suit immediately identified 12 different organic compounds, 3 of which were technically flammable. Jake took a drink. "You're consuming another unknown substance," Plento observed. "It's water, my dude. You know, H2O. Pretty essential stuff." "That's a universal solvent," Plento said, appalled. Jake looked at his water bottle, then back at Plento. "I mean, I guess. Mostly it's just, water. Keeps you hydrated. You guys don't drink water?" "Not recreationally," Velnor said. An awkward silence fell. Jake looked at the 3 of them in their massive hazard suits, standing in a meadow on a sunny day, and something seemed to dawn on him. "Wait, do you guys think Earth is dangerous?" The bioscanner registered 47 different ways we could die within the first 5 minutes of landing, Cree said. 48 if you count my potential anxiety attack, Plento added. Jake laughed. It was a warm, genuine sound that made absolutely no sense given the circumstances. Okay, I get it. You're from somewhere different. Different environment, different normal. But trust me, Earth's not that bad. Here, let me show you around. Once you see how nice it is, you'll relax. Velnor was certain that relaxing on this planet was how species went extinct. But Jake was already walking toward a tree line, gesturing for them to follow. Come on, there's a really cool trail through the woods. Only about a mile loop. Easy stuff. The scanners identified the forest as containing 17 types of venomous organisms, 43 varieties of parasitic life forms, and several large predators that apparently viewed mammals as a food source. Against all better judgment, Velnor followed. Behind him, Cree and Plento exchanged what could only be described as looks of absolute resignation. So, Jake called back over his shoulder, where are you folks from? What's your planet like? Stable, Velnor said. Very, very stable. Boring, got it, Jake said cheerfully and led them into the woods. The forest, according to Jake, was one of his favorite spots. According to every instrument on Velnor's suit, the forest was a concentrated zone of biological warfare, where every organism was engaged in a desperate struggle for survival against every other organism. See that little guy? Jake pointed at a small furry creature sitting on a tree branch. It was holding what appeared to be a seed and making chittering sounds. Velnor's scanner lit up like a supernova. Aggressive predator detected, Possesses sharp incisors capable of penetrating reinforced materials. Territorial behavior likely. Recommend immediate tactical withdrawal. That's a squirrel, Jake said, laughing. They're basically harmless. Well, unless you're a nut. Then you're in trouble. The squirrel made a scolding sound at them and darted up the tree. Cree nearly jumped out of her suit. It's attacking, she shrieked. It's running away, Jake corrected. You guys scared it. We scared it? Plento sounded incredulous. It has weapons-grade teeth. For eating acorns, yeah. They continued down the trail. Every few steps brought a new horror. A buzzing insect that Jake called a bee, which, according to the scanner, was a flying venom deployment system with aggressive defense protocols. Jake explained it made honey and helped flowers. Velnor had no idea how venom production and flower assistance were related and was afraid to ask. Then there was the deer, a massive creature with bones growing out of its skull that Jake described as antlers. The scanner classified it as a large herbivore with battering ram skull modifications. Extreme caution advised. Oh, wow, Jake said softly, watching the deer walk across the trail about 50 feet ahead. That's a big buck, 10 points at least. Absolutely beautiful. It's a weapon with legs, Cree whispered. It eats grass, Jake said. Why does something that eats grass need skull spears? Plento demanded. For fighting other deer during mating season. Totally normal. Nothing about this was normal. Velnor was beginning to realize that humans had a fundamentally different definition of that word. They reached a creek and Jake knelt beside it, cupping his hands to drink directly from the flowing water. Velnor's suit went into full alert mode. That's untreated solvent flowing over unsterilized mineral deposits, he said urgently. You're consuming it directly? It's fresh spring water, tastes amazing. Jake splashed some on his face, his exposed face, that he was just casually letting caustic liquid touch. How? Cree asked slowly. Are you alive? Jake sat back on his heels, seeming to actually consider the question. You know, I get what's happening here. You're from somewhere safer. Probably a nice quiet planet with stable weather and no predators and totally reasonable atmospheric conditions. Correct, all three of them said simultaneously. Right. So Earth probably seems a little intense. But here's the thing. We grew up here. We evolved here. This is normal for us. He gestured around at the death trap forest. Yeah, we've got storms, and earthquakes, and animals with teeth, and sometimes the sun tries to give you cancer if you're not careful. But we adapt. We build shelters, we create medicine. We learn which animals to avoid and which ones are actually pretty chill. How often do the storms occur? Velnor asked carefully. Depends on where you are, but pretty regularly. We've got hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards, that kind of thing. And you continue living here? Where else would we go? Jake said simply. This is home. Velnor's mind was reeling. Humans didn't just survive on Earth. They thrived here. They called catastrophic weather patterns by casual names. They coexisted with venomous creatures. They drank universal solvent for hydration. You mentioned mountains earlier, Plento said weakly. Are they worse than this? Oh yeah, mountains are great. Higher elevation, thinner air, colder temperatures, occasional avalanches, bears, mountain lions. Really peaceful, though. I'm actually going camping up in the Rockies next weekend. Can't wait. The scanners had already analyzed the mountain ranges. They were flagged as extreme hazard zones not suitable for biological life. Jake was planning a recreational visit. I need to sit down, Cree said. There's a nice spot just ahead, Jake offered. Got a great view of the valley. They followed him to a clearing where the forest opened up to reveal a sweeping vista of more forest, some mountains in the distance, and what might have been a lake catching the afternoon light. Velnor had to admit, hazard suits and imminent death aside, it was objectively beautiful. So, Jake said, sitting on a rock that the scanner labeled as mineral formation low threat level, may contain traces of quartz. Tell me about your home. What's it like? Cree began describing their homeworld. Controlled climate, minimal geological activity, carefully balanced ecosystem with no apex predators, Stable, predictable, safe. Jake listened with what appeared to be genuine interest, and when she finished, he nodded thoughtfully. Sounds nice. Kinda quiet though, isn't it? That's the point, Plento said. Yeah, I get that. But you know what? All this? Jake gestured at the forest, the mountains, the sky. It makes you appreciate being alive. When you know the universe can be dangerous, you don't take the good days for granted. And today? Today's a really good day. A bird flew overhead, singing. The scanner identified it as having a beak capable of piercing flesh. To Jake, it was just part of the soundtrack of home. Back at the shuttle, the crew of the Cautious Regard sat in silence, processing what they'd just experienced. Their suits were still sealed, still protecting them from the atmosphere that Jake breathed like it was nothing. Run the analysis again, Velnor said quietly. Plento pulled up the data they'd collected. Atmospheric composition, temperature ranges, biological samples, geological activity, stellar radiation levels. Every single metric was fed through the Galactic Survey's threat assessment algorithm. The result was the same as before. Extreme Death World. Classification Omega. Do not colonize. Do not establish permanent contact. Retreat recommended. He walked through all of that, Cree said slowly, in cloth covering and thin synthetic foot protection. And he called it perfect weather, Plento added. Velnor pulled up the evolutionary data the scanner had compiled on humans. The pieces started falling into place. Humans hadn't just randomly ended up on Earth. They'd evolved here. Every generation had adapted to survive in conditions that would kill most species. Their bodies processed the lethal oxygen atmosphere. They'd developed resistance to radiation. They could regulate their temperature across a range that would send most species into shock. They'd even developed a psychological resilience that let them look at predators and see nature, instead of immediate threats to existence. They're not crazy, Velnor said, the realization hitting him. They're survivors. They had to become this durable just to make it through childhood. There was a knock on the shuttle's outer door. All three of them jumped. Jake's voice came through the external speakers. Hey, before you guys head out, I wanted to give you something. You know, as a welcome gift. Velnor cycled the airlock. Jake stood there holding a small bundle. Flowers, pine cones, and a sealed glass container filled with golden liquid. Wildflowers from the meadow, Jake said, pointing to each item. Pine cones from a ponderosa, they smell amazing, and honey from my neighbor's beehive. Fair warning, it's pretty sweet. The scanner went to work. The flowers contained trace amounts of compounds that could cause allergic reactions in 70% of known species. The pine cones were woody projectiles filled with seeds that could theoretically be used as organic shrapnel. The honey was a complex sugar solution created through insect regurgitation. They were the most threatening gifts Velnor had ever received. Thank you, he managed to say. These are very thoughtful. Jake grinned. No problem. Hey, can I ask you something? Of course. Why do you guys live in such a safe place? I mean, don't get me wrong, safety's great and all, but doesn't it get kind of boring, never having to worry about anything? It was such a fundamentally human question that Velnor almost laughed. Here was a species that had been forged in conditions that would destroy civilizations, asking why anyone would want to avoid danger. We prefer predictability, Velnor said carefully, knowing that tomorrow will be similar to today, that we can plan without worrying about catastrophic variables. Jake nodded slowly. Yeah, I can see that. Different perspectives, right? For us, the challenge is part of what makes life interesting. When you wake up not knowing if it'll rain or shine, if you'll see a bear or a butterfly, it keeps things exciting. Plus, when you live somewhere that's actively trying to kill you, you really appreciate the good moments. And this, Cree gestured at the surrounding landscape, is a good moment? This is a great moment, Jake corrected. Beautiful day, interesting conversation, made some new friends from another planet. I mean, how often does that happen? Pretty special if you ask me. There it was. The fundamental difference between humans and virtually every other species in the galaxy. Where others saw threats, humans saw opportunities. Where others saw a hostile environment, humans saw home. Jake, Velnor said carefully, would you ever consider leaving Earth? Living somewhere safer? Jake looked genuinely confused by the question. Why would I do that? Everything I love is here. The mountains, the forests, my friends, my job, my life. Sure, Earth's not perfect, but it's mine. It's ours. And honestly, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. He paused, then added with a smile. Besides, where else has weather this perfect? Velnor looked at his suit's readouts. Radiation warning. Temperature fluctuation warning. Atmospheric instability warning. Biological hazard warning. Perfect weather. The words meant something completely different to humans. We should return to our ship, Velnor said. But thank you, Jake Morrison of Earth. This has been the most educational first contact of my career. Anytime. Hey, if you guys ever come back, look me up. I'll take you up to the mountains. Way prettier than down here. The scanner had classified the mountains as unsurvivable. Jake thought they were prettier. As the shuttle lifted off, Velnor watched Jake wave goodbye from the meadow, standing casually in what every instrument insisted was a Class 5 biohazard zone. A human. On a death world. Having a great day. Captain, Plento said quietly, I think we just met the toughest species in the galaxy. Agreed, Velnor said, and they don't even realize it. Captain Velnor sat in his quarters aboard the Cautious Regard, staring at the official report template on his screen. 3 hours had passed since they'd left Earth orbit, and he still wasn't sure how to summarize what they'd experienced. Finally, he began to type. Galactic Survey Report, Planet Designation Terra Adjacent 447, Local Designation, Earth. Surveyed by Captain Velnor, Pilot Cree, Science Officer Plento. Classification, Death World, Omega Level. Recommend immediate warning buoys and quarantine protocols. He paused. That was the standard protocol. Any planet that hostile should be flagged as dangerous and avoided. But that wasn't the whole story, was it? Velnor deleted the last sentence and started again. Classification, Death World Omega Level. Indigenous intelligent species detected, humans. Status, friendly, cooperative, and inexplicably resilient. Better, he continued typing. Atmospheric composition would be immediately fatal to 63% of known species without advanced protection. Native humans breathe it continuously and describe it as pleasant. Surface temperature fluctuations exceed safe parameters by significant margins. Native humans call this weather and plan recreational activities around it. Local fauna includes numerous predatory species, venomous organisms, and creatures with natural weapons. Native humans coexist with them peacefully, occasionally keeping them as companions. Yes, you read that correctly. They domesticate the predators. Geological instability manifests as earthquakes, volcanic activity, and severe atmospheric events including electrical storms, high-velocity wind formations, and precipitation that ranges from frozen to scalding. Native humans have building codes for this. Velnor sat back, reading what he'd written. It sounded insane. It was insane. It was also completely accurate. Recommendation, he typed. Earth should be classified as a restricted death world with a diplomatic exception for human contact. While the planet itself is extraordinarily hostile by galactic standards, its native inhabitants represent a potential valuable ally to the galactic community. Reasoning. Any species that evolved to thrive in these conditions possesses survival capabilities far exceeding galactic norms. Humans do not simply tolerate their hostile environment. They have adapted to consider it normal, even pleasant. This psychological and biological resilience suggests humans would be uniquely suited for missions and operations that other species would find impossible. For instance, a human might be the ideal consultant for surveys of volcanic worlds, high radiation zones, or planets with aggressive fauna. What we consider extreme hazards, they consider minor inconveniences or, in some cases, vacation destinations. He thought about Jake planning his camping trip to the mountains. mountains that the scanner had labeled as actively trying to kill anything that approached them. Additional note, Velnor added, human definition of perfect weather includes conditions that would require level 8 hazard protocols for most species. Recommend cultural sensitivity training for any diplomats assigned to Earth. What they consider a compliment about nice weather, we might interpret as sarcasm about survival conditions. Kree appeared in his doorway. Captain, I've been going through the biological data. Did you know humans have a stress response that actually makes them stronger in dangerous situations? Their bodies release chemicals that enhance strength, speed, and pain tolerance when threatened. They have a combat mode? Velnor said weakly. Built in. Evolution gave them a combat mode because their planet kept trying to kill them. Add that to the report, Velnor muttered. Plento joined them, looking as shaken as a blob could look. I've been analyzing their literature and entertainment media. Captain, they tell stories about their own planet trying to kill them. For fun. They make movies about it. They have an entire genre called disaster films where they watch recreations of catastrophic events. They simulate their own trauma for entertainment? Kree asked. Apparently it's therapeutic. Velnor added another paragraph to his report. Humans possess unique psychological adaptations, including the ability to process environmental dangers as entertainment and finding pleasure in preparation for catastrophe. This mindset may prove valuable for emergency response scenarios throughout the galaxy. He saved the report and prepared to transmit it to Galactic Command. But first, he added one final note. Personal observation from Captain Velnor. I have conducted first contact with 47 species across 2 decades of service. I have never encountered a species that was simultaneously so friendly and so terrifying. Humans are kind, welcoming, and genuinely pleased to meet new species. They are also the biological equivalent of a warship that doesn't realize how heavily armed it is. Approach with respect, not fear. They're not dangerous to their friends. They're just built for a fight they didn't choose but learned to love. The transmission sent. Velnor sat back feeling like he'd just introduced the galaxy to something that would change everything. 3 days later, he received a response from Galactic Command. It was brief. Report received and analyzed. Status approved. Earth designated as protected death world. Humans classified as Category 1 potential allies. Next survey assignment. Planet designation Infernus 7, volcanic world with acidic precipitation and extreme tectonic activity. Request. Would you like a human consultant for this mission? They apparently call it challenging but manageable. Velnor looked at Kree and Plento, who had gathered to read the message. What do you think? He asked them. Kree's antennae twitched. If we're going to survey a literal hell planet, we might as well bring someone who thinks hell is just weather. Agreed, Plento said. Plus, if we're going to die on a volcano planet, I'd prefer to do it with someone who's enthusiastic about the experience. Velnor drafted his response. Affirmative on human consultant. Request Jake Morrison, Earth Park Ranger, if available. Please advise he will need to explain his definition of challenging. He hit send and looked out the viewport at the stars streaming past. Somewhere out there, Jake Morrison was probably already planning his next camping trip, completely unaware that he'd just become the galaxy's go-to expert on surviving places that wanted you dead. One species' hostile environment was another species' perfect weather, and somehow, impossibly, humanity had learned to love the storm.